Agni Zotis here with the Educators Edition and Make Kids Transform. We have Maria Agorastou from Athens, Greece. We're ready to dive into this conversation and very interested to hear what she has to say, as it will be my first time of getting to know her on this level and what she does. So thanks for joining. And thank you. And nice to see you, Maria. Well,
Nice to see you too. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My title, I think, will always be a teacher, regardless of what I do. So, um, for the last 20 years, I have been a clinician. I've always been a clinician. I'm a clinical social worker, so that's a very complex clinical background in everything I do. And with that capacity, um, I function both as a clinician and as a clinical professor at a university. So I have both of my roles active at the same time: clinical work, educational work. Now, throughout my years of being a clinical social worker and a therapist, I worked in different capacities. My starting, both in Greece and the United States, was in the educational places. So elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. That was the big start of being a clinician working in big educational institutions. The main idea was systemic change. If I want to preface it, systemic change in terms of inclusion and when it pertains to disabilities, and then systemic change when it pertains to especially emotional and behavioral disabilities, because that's where the problem was. In all aspects, in all levels of schooling, both in the United States and in Greece, kids with emotional and behavioral disabilities and disorders were the highest rate, they had the highest rates of being expelled from school, falling through the cracks of the system, never graduating. They had the highest dropout rates and the worst actually quality experience in school. So as I was doing my research, as I was working on federal research grants for schools, I started looking more into the whys of behavioral and emotional health in all levels of education. And now I'm doing it at the university level as well, as I am. I'm located here in Athens. I'm part of a private American college and university, and I'm directing the counseling center of the university, which is part of the services we provide to all students and faculty and staff. And now I'm taking this work I've done in elementary school and middle and high school to the university level in terms of emotional and behavioral health and well-being and resiliency, and what that means as the very baseline of being successful. We cannot have academic success as we think about academic success without having a baseline of emotional well-being. So that's what I'm doing, directing the counseling center and teaching courses in clinical psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy.
I think it's very important work. I didn't know that you worked in the United States. Where were you? And
I was in New Hampshire
okay.
for 11 years.
How long ago?
I was there from 2000 till 2011.
Okay. So you're
I was many years. Yes, I was over a decade in the States.
yeah, but it's also a time, I'm just thinking of time-wise, because I also started work probably 2001 with youth, and that language wasn't present in schools. So it's kind of interesting that I really like that you were doing this.
Yeah, because we started going into implementation and research and systemic change work in high schools in 2003 in the United States. That was the time, around 2003, that was the time when public schools especially started opening up in these concepts. But it was all outside work, right? So these were all university-based research, teams that were coming with, hey, hello, this is what we're doing. That's why the buy-in phase was very complex in the beginning. Public high schools, they already had enough on their plates, and seeing people from a university going there and, giving them all this, presentation about who we are and what we do, for them in the beginning, it was quite suspicious, actually. Like, okay, so are we going to do more work now? Or, are you asking us to put on more on our plates? And what's in it for us? And, how much time will it take us? So it was the initial stage that was everywhere in the States, because we were a network of universities that were working in different states on, same initiatives. And we all faced similar issues in terms of, the buy-in and the resistance and the suspicion of the school administrators of what this is about.
Absolutely. It's a big
Yeah.
deal. Absolutely. I mean, it was like, I know from my own experience, it was like alien work or some witchcraft, some weird stuff. Meanwhile, it's like common sense. I mean, we're talking about schools, but this is like for adults, the language might change, but it's, basic human mechanisms that we're talking about. And I know for my own self, like some that I have to do to practice and remember.
What do you think for you when you went to the school? What do you think was the biggest obstacle you had to face?
Well, I started kind of organic because I started with my son when he was 3 with art because I just thought that kids should have art. I mean, he had art at home, obviously, but it was also 9/11 had just happened, so he started school like the next week. So I guess I wanted to be close to him. And in that aspect, it just gave me a way in the arts. And plus, I thought that kids, I always think that people should express themselves, and not as artists. I mean, we don't all have to be artists, but as expressions. And it's such an easy way to have a catharsis, kind of an expression of emotion. Just making a drawing could be profound. So I wasn't even. I was kind of thinking of it as fun, as as um, as yeah, as engagement, as community building, and that's how I see it still. And then when my kid was about 12, a, a, a friend of his, one of the young boys, tried to cut his head off. And it really moved me. And my kid asked me to get involved on another level. I've been going out to India for 30 years. I've been a teacher of meditation and yoga and all that stuff, and mindset, kind of really dealing with my own stuff. So I already had that background. So it was kind of effortless because my house was always full of art and full of kids. And I'm always interested in conversations and having these conversations of consciousness, reality. I mean, we're kind of like, you know, and how we're creating it. I mean, we're always accepting realities as they're given to us. And I do it to this day. And I'm like always shocked, but the reality is we are creating our realities. So,
Yeah, and a part of it, like a couple of things that came to mind now as I was, listening to you. From a scientific perspective, we know that the majority of trauma, relational trauma for kids especially, is pre-verbal. So, they don't remember it. They cannot actually put into words. They cannot find a voice for it. And we have seen again and again that art is the best way for kids to express relational trauma. That's the way, being creative is the way to do it. Drawing or, sound play, um, doing whatever involves their imagination and their focus and them using their hands and being free to do that has been and will be one of the most therapeutic ways to do this. And so that's why part of interventions in schools at any level, right? Art is part of it. Arts therapy is part of it. We encourage it as at least, at the level of, my level of clinicians, where we see a more holistic approach on the human. we do encourage art as a means of expression and as a means of intervention as well. So one part is that. And then, if we want to go into more spiritual terms for that, in terms of like what reality is, right? And again, spiritual creation is always, the spiritual sense of reality creation is part of neuroscience as well. So we start seeing, we start connecting all the dots, but
Physics.
and physics, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common sense. Yeah.
This common sense, it's not woohoo, this kind that I'm thinking about of something. So I keep talking to students and clients of mine about, the neural pathways of trauma and how they decrease our capacity to be able to see more possibilities for ourselves. And that, in essence, means that we get stuck in one version of reality because that's the only thing we think is possible for us. We don't expect anything different. And trauma will do this. It's unprocessed trauma and emotions, right? See how they all fit together? So we do, that was a nice line from Anais Nin, I think. Anais Nin was great in that when she said that we don't see we don't see reality as it is, we see it as we are.
Yeah.
And it's exactly it. All filters, what we perceive about ourselves and others, what we perceive that is possible for us. That's what will keep on creating realities. And unfortunately, it will keep on creating the same reality,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I can't help to think also the need of consistency, right? Because the only thing in life is the uncertainty.
Mm,
And knowing even for my own self sometimes, right? But I think this is for everybody. Like, we prefer to have a familiar space, even if it sucks.
yeah.
Right? Because it's like predictable. It's in some ways it becomes safe, or we could calculative, or where the other one takes, yeah, yeah, immense energy to even. But as I'm saying this, it's not correct because it's just perspective. It's a different focus. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's the same amount of energy,
It it
actually.
is. I think it's a matter of, it's zooming out and saying, that you can choose also something else. But in what you were saying, yeah, I mean, the human brain loves coherence, loves predictability,
No.
hates uncertainty. So it will get you to shitty places again and again and again because they just give you a sense of coherence. The narrative makes sense, not because it makes you happy. It's not a job to make you happy. That's the thing. Especially when we talk about, our default mode networks, those parts of the brain that kept us alive all those years, and they are activated by fear and, and stress. They don't have any capacity to make you happy. They said, this is a coherent way for you to stay safe. And that means most likely isolation, that's what it is. It's like stay back, don't engage, don't go out, don't do art, don't explore, don't become uncertain, don't feel that, don't get into that mold that you don't know the answers. Stay here and we'll be safe. And I keep saying this to both my students and therapy clients that the best way for you to stay for your default mode for your ego to be happy is to stay home and not engage in anything. It will be very happy. That part of your brain will be like, yeah, well, now I'm happy because we do nothing. Nobody's going to harm us. Nothing is going to happen to us. Right? It's this type of lifestyle that it requires.
Yeah. I was thinking this morning about reality. And I was having this real sense of like, what is it? Like, because every time I come close to, like, I think I got it, it's like, no, it's just another version of the illusion. Um, uh, uh, but at the same time, I had my cat on my lap, and that felt really real,
Yeah.
you know? So it's
I
it's
think. Agni, I think the moment we start actually looking for it, that's when we lose it.
Yeah.
It's like very elusive because it's like trying to find out if, I don't know, if the refrigerator has a light. We're trying to prove to ourselves that the refrigerator does not have a light. So you open it up and there's a light, and then you close it and you're like, I don't know if it has a light in it. It's just this bizarre kind of thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
That in
Moment, honey. It's like we're out of the moment. We're like projecting stuff, which is the usual case, right? It's either projection, future, or past. What happened to me in the past to get my identity?
what's actually okay. So this discussion is is getting in a lot of places, and I love it. But think about it. So we talk about education, right? And how bringing these concepts into educational spaces, concepts like, art and holistic approaches and consciousness. And, now there are universities that have labs of consciousness studies and reality creation and identity work require from all schools and subsequently when we are adults to educate kids on distress tolerance. That is the biggest part of it, is us being able to educate children to stay within a gray area of not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that developmentally, that is not that possible below the ages of 11, because we know that kids up to the age of 11, they don't have abstract things, so it might be difficult for them, even though we can do work with them. But for older kids, when we talk about consciousness and empowerment and what it means to create your own reality, to create your own circumstances of your life, the only prerequisite that has is actually tolerating the uncertainty, tolerating you being part of this without actually knowing the specific outcome in terms of when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. You see, it becomes kind of becomes a little bit yeah, abstract is a word, and that's why people tend to avoid it. But tolerance, distress intolerance is one of the major issues in psychopathology. The majority of psychological disorders have their root in our inability to tolerate stress and uncertainty. Think about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
um, so that's why getting into consciousness and mindfulness techniques is always very helpful.
Is that how you educate youth? How do you educate youth? What's
Yeah.
the best tool in what you're saying?
Well, it depends on the age and the gender, age and gender, but um, across the board in all ages, some form of mindfulness and breath work will always work. For older kids, high school kids, and university students, doing more structured mindfulness practices along with breath work is very helpful for them. So mindfulness practices, they will do walking meditation, they will use sensory meditations, just ground yourself in what you see. They will also we're also using a lot of meditations in terms of just be still and observe your thoughts without adding narrations on top of it.
Mm.
That has been very successful.
What's
For
a big deal?
is they love this. They love this because it gives them. This is not about them, being relaxed. And we keep telling them this is not about you becoming a Zen, monk, but it is about you telling your brain that you have the power to disrupt what is happening. Right. So what we see is usually anxiety disorders, right? Let's take the most common one, uh, students of all ages, especially high school and university students, over analyzing, overthinking, spiraling, being perfectionists, and procrastinators at the same time, because these two go together, right? Panic attacks, emotional decisions, avoidance, phobias. This is like the whole thing, of issues that they're bringing. In all of those, being able to consciously stop and observe your thoughts, even if it's minutes per day,
Mm.
it gives such an empowered sense to people doing it, because they understand that once I'm able to observe it, then I can change it, or I can delay it, or I don't have to do it. This whole idea of you don't have to believe everything you think,
Oh,
because this is what we're doing there with them. And cognitive behavioral therapy is like that. It's like you don't have to believe everything you think, because we do a lot of work with challenging the way you think and why you're thinking it. But with mindfulness and with consciousness work and with breath work, it becomes an embodied experience. It's not just on the conceptual level, on the cognitive level. Now it becomes an embodied experience of you throughout the day. I will, try to do this, try to stop and breathe and observe. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to correct it. You don't have to control it. It's you being a witness to it, and see how that goes. And see how that goes. So each time they choose something like this, they understand that they are strengthening a neural pathway, a new neural pathway that is alternative to the default mode network that we have. So they're like, okay, we cannot get rid of the default, but we can create an alternative next to it, that we keep on strengthening every time we make a different choice. Every time we have a horrible thought, a spiraling thought, every time we have a thought that says, okay, be violent, act out or run, fly, don't stay there. Every time we have this type of thoughts that belong to a trauma response category, we ask them, okay, let's break this. We need to respond differently. Let's learn to respond differently so you can have a different experience, thus a different reality in your life. But you have to respond differently to the same stimuli. That is the goal. And that's why, distress or stress intolerance, increasing the window of tolerance, as we say, is given. It's what we want them to do. And mindfulness and meditation and breath work and holistic approaches, embodied practices, are usually what will have the best results in this. Do it make sense, or did that go all over the place?
no, it makes sense. Of course, it makes sense. And I think that's for kids. It's a wonderful training. I mean, that's what I teach.
Yeah.
Also, it, and I think we all can do it
Mm.
at whatever age.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we all do. So it's not all over the place. It's completely on point, and it's something that we all need to be aware of
Yeah.
and constantly work on, especially whatever age. I mean, I think educators have to work on this in particular,
Yeah.
so they could actually bring it to the table. Because it also pulls us away from judgment, right? Because it's very like judgment is part of the mind, right? So it's not like we're gonna eliminate it. We need it. But it's like we don't have to believe everything.
Yeah.
Like this idea that we think that our thoughts is who we are. It's really bizarre, honestly, and how we're conditioned like that.
And if you think that we have approximately 50 to 60,000 thoughts per day, out of which only like 10% is conscious to us, and from that 10% that is conscious to us, 90%, I believe, they're repetitive thoughts
Yeah, that's it.
that are partially valid. It really does not make any sense. But at the same time, people do not have the tools to do this. So that's why, we do have responsibility to bring that out there to the capacity that each of us, can do it. Now, in terms of the educators, things are improving with educators, but they have been very difficult to work with, very resistant to work with in terms of those concepts, right?
Yeah,
Because,
for anybody, right? I mean,
yeah, because they too are conditioned to believe that, that this is the curriculum, this is what I have to do, everything else is foo-foo and nothing else is going to work, and everything else is optional or something that we do just for fun, um but and I kept telling them, because I did my PhD interviewing educators on their capacity to include kids with disabilities, emotional, behavioral, and physical disabilities in the schools. And it was a qualitative study that took me a year to do, but I stayed with educators. I was going to educators in high schools and primary schools in Greece and in the States. And it revolved around discussions of how they perceive themselves in terms of their capacity to include. Not what the government does, that was part of it, not what the system does, not what the resources are. These are all, parts of them being able to do it better or worse. But at the end of the day, the conclusion was that the more the teachers embrace their own uncertainty and doing their own personal healing work, and they're questioning their own beliefs about, why am I a teacher? What does it mean to be a teacher? And the more they benefited from these practices of them being mindful, of them having this type of attitudes for themselves, of course, the more likely they were to do this with their students.
yeah.
So teachers need a lot of support in that area, and the administration needs to understand that supporting the teachers in that capacity, not just trainings for them how to write better teaching plans, not just how to, become more efficient in math. These are all important, but also how they can be grounded in the classroom as teachers, how they can use their own selves as vessels to bring, a different concept and a different mentality in the class. It's also important because that will transmute to the kids as well, right?
Maria, I think it's the most important, personally. I mean, that's what has gotten my attention more and more in the past decade or so, and because that's where I see the biggest resistance. Anybody that works with kids knows that they're open vessels and very fragile nervous systems. You do 10 breaths with a kid, they're out. They're like, you know. So it's the educators that come in. Um, and I know that nobody becomes an educator without really loving it to begin with. And I understand the system is as that there is all these guidelines for them that they have to, test in a certain way, do this in a certain way. So I get it. I get that. But I think they get lost. I've seen that. I've seen it again and again and again. I mean, one of my personal experiences that I went to, in New York in a high school, I don't have one teacher that I could be like, oh, wow, they inspired me.
Mm.
Like, I don't have that, which I find bizarre.
Do you think they're overworked, especially within the the structure of New York? Because New York City, it's a very busy town. Do you think
That's definitely overwork. I mean, the teachers are babysitters. They are, they have to keep 30, 40 kids in one place, quiet. This idea that you got to sit there. I mean, the older kids gets easier, but the young ones, it's absurd to think that they're going to sit there quietly for 8, 9 hours. There's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, they're buzzing.
yeah.
You talked about arts. They took out all the arts from schools. I didn't have art in schools, and besides me, my son. I mean, okay, my son grew up in a home of a studio, so it wasn't an issue. But there were no art in his schools. It was absurd. Okay, one class, this one we get or that one. Like, I think throughout all the years he had one art class. So it's insane the way they. So I think that the teachers become part of the problems because of the system.
Yeah.
That's what's expected, honestly. That's how they're trained, and that's what's expected of them to do. So I get it. I get it. And I don't think, I mean, before you touched on it a bit, right? Like you can't change a system from within a system. You have to come from the outside. Because once you're part of the inside, then you got to abide by those rules. I think they're overworked. I think they have to deal with a lot of stuff, the educators, um, a lot. They're not just there to teach.
Well, they do. And the majority of educators also, they do know the value of art. They do.
Of course they do.
They do appreciate it. It's just that, especially now in the States, with all those current budget cuts in arts programs, that is a huge that's a huge deficit for the kid and for the system.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the idea of know thyself. I mean, they see tremendous value of being able to emotionally regulate. But you ask them, like, do you know how to? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
Okay, but you expect the other. And I've seen that with parents, by the way,
Yeah.
like many times. Like, oh, can you teach my kid? And I'm always like, the best way to teach your kid is you learn and you practice it and you have it in your home, and then it becomes part of the language. It's not something that, you force your kid to do, and meanwhile you're doing something completely different.
Which, that's a great point, which gets us to, like, another concept, that, that aspect of co-regulation, which is so important for humans in general to survive, is attunement and co-regulation. And that cannot happen in a vacuum. It takes two parts of being regulated enough, at least one of them being more regulated, when we talk about parents and kids, so they can learn how to co-regulate. So you cannot expect a child to go to the room and think about it or cry it out when you are yelling to the kid, right? Because you are not regulated as a parent. So that will not be able to, transfer to the kid as well. So we cannot expect students, and I see this, me being a teacher, having grown ups as students, right? I need to get my self-checked and regulated before I enter the classroom, because things happen and triggers happen and people, lose their patience, and, it can get pretty bad pretty fast. So this ability to be able to self-regulate and then co-regulate it's at the core, Agni, of what it means to be a human being. A healthy human being requires attunement and emotional regulation, individual and co-regulation. That's like the base. We cannot go anywhere without it. That it increases safety. People feel seen. We can communicate based on that. We build trust. We build communities. We start understanding ourselves and how we are seen and how we are perceived. We start seeing different possibilities. This is huge. Emotional awareness and emotional regulation skills are huge.
Fundamental for kids and adults. I mean,
Yes,
we are
for everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody. And we see that, now I've seen it with my niece is 8, and she's in first grade. And I've seen some new teachers in the public school when she was in kindergarten. Her teacher taught all the kids on how to regulate, how to identify emotions, how to breathe through the emotions, how to name the emotions. And that, I was so surprised by this. I'm like, whoa, we never had this in kindergarten. And the fact that she can do that, it made her very assertive. She will say, I need my space because I feel angry, and anger is a good emotion, and it's like fire, and I feel it here. I need to breathe through it. So things start changing, start moving. But again, one thing that I've seen through my research is a lot of systems leave it up to the good grace of the teachers.
Right.
They know the value, but they depend on like, well, if Agni is the teacher, she's great, she's gonna do it. It's a good thing we have Agni in school, right? And she will do it. But that's not the solution.
That's another solution.
Yeah.
Because even, like a couple of classes on this will stay for a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
The awareness is there.
Mm-hmm. And it has to be taken as an important aspect of the curriculum, not as an optional thing to do it. We do it for fun or to relax. No. The clinical studies are very clear about the benefits of, because we talk about in general, emotional intelligence, right? So self-awareness and self-regulation and behavioral expectations, plus this will build the resiliency factor in schools. The clinical studies are showing again and again and again that when these levels are up, academic achievement is up as well.
Yes.
It's basic common sense and basic neuroscience. If we cannot regulate, we have a limited capacity to remember. Like working memory does not work very well. So we cannot expect kids in school not being regulated, not have teachers who can help them regulate themselves, and not have any outlets to regulate themselves, like painting, like drawing, like doing whatever. We cannot expect kids in unregulated states to be able to have working memory. You see how it's mutually exclusive. It's basic neuroscience. That's not how it works. So I think that is where our work is.
I think it's very important work, Maria. Really important work for the next generations. And when I see the world that we live in, which is getting more bizarre by the second, honestly, I see adults that are completely lost, have no idea how to self-regulate. And we see that in our friends groups, we see that in people we know, we see that in governments, we see that wherever it is, everywhere. I just have that's what I'm seeing, and it's adults running this world. So I really feel like this is basic human mechanics that we all need to understand, and then make the choice. Okay, I want to be a shithead.
Yeah.
That's a choice, and that's okay.
Yes.
I coming from that than just reacting to fear.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Survival mode, because they're all out to get me, because that's what happens in my brain. That's the vibes that are coming in. I get it.
And think about this. I mean, they're all to get me, and we have a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old who thinks they're all out to get me, with parents that think they're all to get me. So there's this chaotic environment in the house. Now, they're all out to get me without emotional regulation and awareness, and you have political power.
Yeah.
Nobody can stop you, right? You have a system that will, make this okay, will normalize this, because everybody else in that system is the same.
Yeah.
So what's happening? Then we have this, huge societal, violent acts in all levels, and the political and the global. So for us in this field of work, we do see it, and it's really frustrating. We do see it, and we're like, come on, you guys, regulate a little bit, detach a little bit, see what is actually happening. Don't believe everything you think in your head. Don't believe it. So it's a global thing now that everybody believes that one country is like dangerous to the other country, and and all the all the benefits within there, money involved. It is a mess. So we need to start early.
Power.
Power struggles. We need to stop early.
Power. This idea of power. I don't know, in my years on this earth, what I've come to understand is that it's very hard to navigate power without abusing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It usually gets abused. Very, very, very. There's very few characters that could come to my mind to be like, no, they're okay. They're not misusing their power.
Well, it takes a very grounded person to not misuse their power. Also,
Grounded,
yeah,
self-regulated.
exactly. Yeah. That is that type of emotional intelligent human being with all these aspects, the self-regulation, the awareness. Um,
A real leader, which is to encourage others to rise up instead of getting power from stepping on everybody else. I mean, there's a lot of insecurity in that, right? I understand that, but I also understand how stupid it is because it doesn't have to be like that.
no, it doesn't, but think about it, the global concepts and the global emotional quotient level, it's not that high for people to be able to discern what is happening within them. So people become gullible. They do believe what they see, they do believe what they hear. They identify with things in their heads, and then somebody else is parroting that back, and it's like, oh, it's a political party, or it's somebody else, so I'm gonna go there. So we do have this very automatic kind of societies. Everybody is functioning like at an default mode network level. I think it, I'll do it. I If I think it, it must be true. That's a very common distortion that people have. If I think it, it must be true. Not only about themselves, about everybody else.
Right, right, right. So our societies really reflect our individual capacities, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we need to keep on working on those aspects from our positions and our capacity and our levels of education we're at, right?
Absolutely. Hey, you mentioned before at the age of 11 making the separation,
Yeah.
development of the brain. Can you get into that a little bit, like for younger kids, for any educators?
Well, yeah, that's it's a very basic developmental psychology kind of thing, but I'm talking about the ability to form abstract thinking. We as humans, we start developing that ability after the age of 11, 12. Maybe girls a little bit earlier, like around the age of 10. But think about 10 to 12 are very formative years, is the transition from primary school to middle school. Those years are when kids start having abstract thinking. So in other words, they do not rely only on emotional thinking. They start making conclusions about the world based on what they see, and they are able to start synthesizing information, right? Information from here and here and here, and they make a conclusion about life and about themselves and about the world. Before that, kids are more emotional. They think more with the limbic system, the limbic brain, what it has to do with their emotions. So the way we approach, for example, mindfulness with little ones is different with the way we do it with the older kids. So little ones, they want more sensory-based activities to be able to focus and to process information. Whereas, older kids, we can make it a little bit more complex in terms of, how else we're going to do this. They can go a little bit more abstract. And that's not only at the level of the interventions we're using, but also at the level of how they're thinking about themselves and others. Before the age of 11, if my mom or if my teacher mirrors back to me something that has no explanation, has no correction, there's no repair. I do something and somebody yells at me or, and doesn't apologize to me, there's no repair. My main message is that I'm wrong. I'm a bad girl. I'm a bad boy. I don't deserve anything. I have no value. So this is what happens below the age of 11. We have to be very careful about not expecting kids to be perfect, not expecting that kids will not act out, but us as adults being able to repair the perception of the child, of how they see themselves, and us, in relationship to the kid. How do we apologize? How do we embrace? How do we correct that perception they have about themselves and others? So, developmentally, developmental psychology has given us a lot of tools on how to work around any, level of education that we want to get to the students. But what I'm saying is we need to be really careful on how we go about and what we expect from kids depending on the developmental level they're at.
So great. Thank you.
Yep.
This is really great.
So, this is a great type of work. I think the momentum globally is increasing. I see more and more teachers collaborating with clinicians like myself, with artists like yourself, with researchers, looking at creativity, with the neuroscience of creativity, with the spirituality of life. We started putting in place different types of curricula that we wouldn't think of doing like 10, 15 years ago. And that is great. Do we have a long way to go? Yeah, we do. Do we have a system that does not approve? I think it's not an approval. I think the system believes that this is not productive or efficient or effective. They have some bizarre, perception about this. But we do have a lot of work to do. We do have a system that opposes because mainly it doesn't understand what is happening. But we're going to continue doing it because it's good for us as well, doing it, because we are really whole human beings being there and doing this.
Yeah. The most important work.
Yeah. So that was just a little bit of what we can, we can talk about. But
I love it. I love it so much, Maria. There's so many things that have come to my mind that
so anytime you wanna, check back and continue this discussion and bring other people in, have a discussion, I'm up for it.
I think we will. I think I mean, for me, it's very important to build. I'm thinking of it. I've been doing it in a way, but not as fast enough, I guess, because the time has come for this information. It's to unite this and create. I mean, this is part of these conversations are for educators globally to be able to tap in and maybe learn something, maybe see another way of being, because they do burn out.
Yeah. And also, just people listening and people seeing, especially educators, just start entertaining some questions in their minds. It's not like, can I do this? How would it feel like? How does it look like? Can I fix this? Even this type of, of pondering is important.
Pondering, without pondering, my gosh, what we have. We got what's served to us in the platter of propaganda.
And we just take it. No questions asked, right?
No questions asked, but I think it's time to ask all the questions and let the mind expand and wonder because we're evolving and it's happening and I see it all the time and I'm really grateful for this conversation. and giving me the time, Maria. And I love your knowledge so much.
So, thank you so much. And anytime, I can be back with anyone you want, and we can continue to do this.
I think we will.
All right.
I think we're gonna find ways to do this very effectively.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.